So, hello and welcome back to Vulnerable Visibility 101. This is week 6. So, welcome to week 6. Can you believe it? 6 out of 8. We're getting there. I'm so glad that you are all here. Our theme for today is safety and trust. And I want to thank you for saying yes to yourself and to your people by showing up for this 8-week journey. And as always, I'm so excited to be with you here today, whether you've joined live, thank you all for being here, or whether you're watching the recording later. I just hope that this continues to support you and your vulnerable visibility. As you know, I am Starr with 2 R's, your teacher, your coach, and your guide. No, that's not it. My brain's not quite on yet this morning. I'm here to support you to keep showing up more visibly, more vulnerably, more imperfectly, and more powerfully, so the right people can find you and so the wrong people know that you're not their person. So can I remind you what to expect for our time together today? Awesome. So as usual, we'll start with a little check-in and we'll go back to our 2 check-in model, with our first check-in being kind of what came up the previous week, how you're feeling about your progress, and the second check-in, breakout, and reflection around any celebrations or challenges. And I'll give you more details about that in a minute. And then we'll go over today's content, including your assignments for the week. And then we'll spend whatever time we have left on some coaching or maybe even some workshopping on stuff that you've already been working on, for those who could use some Starr flavored support. Sound good? Awesome. So we're going to go right in to a partner share. And this is where you'll have 5 minutes. Just a reminder to not hit that magical blue button when it comes up, so that it can just count out those last 60 seconds. Each of you will get 2.5 minutes. I will put in the chat some ideas about what to talk about. Things like, how is the homework around positioning? How do you feel about what you came up with? What were your insights? What was valuable for you? Any new discoveries? Anything you want to talk about, share with your partner around what's been your progress so far, and specifically around the last week. Everyone clear on what we're doing? Partner sharing for 5 minutes, 2.5 minutes each. Our magical tech helper B will put you in your breakouts, and we'll actually be joining one of you in a breakout, and I'll see you back here in 5 minutes. Welcome back, everybody. If you could share in the chat 1 to 3 words about how awesome your partner is. 1 to 3 words in the chat about how awesome your partner is. Or was, or is. What you got? I love looking at all the thinking faces. Looking outside this country to his roots for inspiration. Love that. Beautifully honest and vulnerable, honest and real. Love it. I so needed to be heard, and B was validating and had actionable advice. Love that. Environment and thoughtful. Love that. Yay. Beautiful. So anyone want to do some shares? Has integrity and is honest. Yes. We got some honest, real people in this group. Yay. Y'all are awesome. Love that. Anyone want to be witnessed by the whole group? What has been, an insight you've had over the last week? Yeah, Dottie, what you got?
Every positioning statement I came up with, then there were 6. There's the start of a story.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're going to talk about story in the next week or 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, today and next week we'll be talking about.
And 2 of them are similar, but then 4 of them are quite different. And I hadn't mentioned them before, so it's interesting.
Fun. Cool. And how was that experience for you, writing all those out?
Enlightening.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've been so stuck on, exploring mind, body, spirit stuff when I was a nurse. Well, there's more than that. Yeah.
Awesome. And one of the things we talked about last week was giving yourself permission to be in awe of yourself. Did you have any of those moments as you're looking at how many positioning statements you have?
Well, I did 5 and then I thought, I've got to get the Chinese in here somewhere. So number 6, I dashed out like at 1:45. I like to learn right now. I'm learning to speak Mandarin Chinese so I can understand what my favorite Chinese artists are singing and saying. It's like, got to get that in there.
Love
It's my fourth language.
it.
I'm not real good at French anymore, like it's non-existent. In Spanish, I'm slowly losing, but now I'm working on the Chinese and it's fun. I like it. I like learning.
Well, if we can't fit it in at the beginning, we might find a way next week to fit it in at the end. So
Yes.
keep it in your
Yes.
pocket. You might find a place for it.
Well, my curiosity continues.
Yes, good.
I'm not stale. I may be stuck in my chair, but I'm not stale.
Yes. We'll send you
Yes.
supportive and witnessing vibes as you continue to find ways to describe how awesome you are.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dottie. God, that was a powerful experience for you. Anyone else want to share? What has come up for you around this idea of positioning? Susanna, is that an almost hand going up? Is that like, am I finishing chewing? Give me a second. Hand.
Yeah, and also like trying to get it in order and make sure that I really can make sense for a minute.
I know.
I've just always struggled with I'm a massage therapist technically, but there's like so much that goes into like what we can do, and like I've never wanted to give a massage. It's just boring. And I've been struggling with that for 20 years. And like, how do you make a living when people have this way of thinking of it? And so I feel like I've just gone down this road this past so many times. Like, how do I make a persuasive statement so people know what I want to provide? And then I'm always nervous. Like, am I? Anyway, we've been through that. So I think what I'm feeling a lot of clarity on right now is that I just need to change the words around it. Like it's not massage, it's intentional body work. It's intentional massage. And then I can purpose driven, there are words that make it more clear.
Yeah.
Because I've studied over 12 modalities, and that's to the side of other healing arts and religious and spiritual stuff. So yeah, I'm awesome. And I do really cool things. And I have so many wonderful testimonials from clients I've worked with for a long time. And so I don't know what point I was making.
Can I reflect what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
Kind of based on some of the stuff that you had said in the Facebook group this last week around this idea of giving yourself, permission, and then today, the word that keeps coming up is permission, like giving yourself permission to describe what you do with more aligned words, and really lean into, I don't have to just say it this one way because that's how people think about it. I can really play around. So I feel like there's this permission to play. It doesn't mean that you necessarily have the magic words yet, but there's this like, I get this, oh, I actually can play with this. This doesn't have to be pigeonholed into this one corner that society puts me in.
That feels really good. I'm kind of a playful person anyway, so it's a match.
Yes, I love that. Well, can we send you lots of supportive vibes and playful vibes as you continue to play around these edges of talking about the powerful, awesome work that you do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susanna. So glad you're here. Thanks. Any other final thoughts before we move into another quick breakout? Anyone want to be witnessed on anything? Okay, so we're going to do another quick breakout. This one's going to be 4 minutes. And this is celebrations and challenges. I encourage you to lead with celebrations, anything you want to celebrate, even if it's what you already just said, but just framing it as I'm celebrating this, and then really own that energy of celebration. And then feel free to name any challenges that you've had so you can be witnessed in those as you move through them as well. So 4 minutes, celebrations and challenges, and we'll see you back here to celebrate with the group. Welcome back, everyone. As usual, 1 to 3 words about how amazing and inspiring your partner is. Open. Love that. Continues to learn and grow in their work. Inspiring and wise. Tenacious growth. Yes, yes, yes. Beautiful. Yeah. Anyone want to share with the group? Inspiring and present. She has so much happening, but still shows up grounded for her clients. Yeah, B, what you got?
I just want to warn you guys that I keep a list of compliments. So
That's awesome. I love that. That's a great idea. So anyone want to share with the group any celebrations or challenges or both so that you can be witnessed and held in this group space? Yeah, Dottie. Sure.
There I go. Okay, so B pointed out that I need money, and I know I need money, and it's going to come from somewhere. I have faith in that, and I feel calmer that it's going to come. I don't know what it looks like yet. And she pointed out, I want to be real clear on what I want the money for.
Mm.
And I had written down, because we've got a coaching session coming up, and I'd written down for the coaching session, I really want to have on Thursday, I want the coaching session on me. Change what I want for the world. Bypass my fear, change what I want for the world, square need for money. So it's like, I need to get less confused about money and how where it comes from and how to get there. And it doesn't have to be hard work. And it's just like, because I grew up with you work hard for and get paid for doing things.
Right.
That good old middle American, this is the way you do it, by parents who were young adults in the Depression.
Mm-hmm.
And I need clarity on that.
Yeah, thank you. Well,
Mhm.
can we send you some vibes? I know that you have a little bit of coaching today, and we've got our waiting in member coaching call on Thursday, but also that the universe just brings you lots of opportunities for more information and reframing and different ways to see this for yourself.
Mhm. Thank you.
Thanks for your vulnerability. Anyone else want to share before we move on to our meat of the topic today? B.
I think I'm into sharing. Just because I'm so excited about this, I can't stand it. I've wanted an audio copy of my book since it came out in 2019, late 2019, or maybe early 2020, and then COVID and blah 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 blah. And I knew how it was going to look. I knew how this was going to happen because we all do that, right? And a whole better version just showed up last week, and so this will all happen in the next few months, and you'll hear about it. But I'm so excited, I can't stand it.
Yay! Can we do like a happy celebration dance with you? Yay! It just showed up. How easy, how usual. Ooh, ooh. Awesome. Thank you, B. So excited for you. And keep us posted. Awesome. Any final witnessing before we move on? Just want to make that space for you. If you've got a burning desire. Yeah, Amanda, what you got?
As I finish chewing. So last week was feeling great, right? Like had my new client, had my first session with them, it reaffirmed and reconfirmed like why I'm an EFT tapper and that's where my magic really is. And like, an aligned client, and it's like bringing all this new marketing language and like how I want to like defining my niche, right? All this stuff. So it's aligned with this. And then I had my meeting with Frank, who is the head of our mental health facility here, right? And I'm trying to get myself a position as a suicide prevention and postvention person. And so we had our meeting on Friday, and I went in there and I just like unabashedly kind of pitched myself for a couple things because the crisis team leader was in there in that meeting as well. And we talked about, he made mention of somebody else that I know that actually was a licensed clinical like professional. They've given that up. They now coach people. They coach teens. And people utilize her. And I said, oh, is Denise using her license still? Like, is she billing insurance? And they're like, no, we just refer families to her and they pay for her coaching. I said, well, I actually have an evidence-based practice that I use. I'm an EFT tapping practitioner and I also work with teens. And I said, I'm not just a coach, I actually have an evidence-based, modality that I use. And I would love for you to start referring parents and families to me as well. And Frank was like, oh, well, I don't know what EFT is. I'd love to know more. And instead of me being like, oh, sure, this is what EFT is, I said, you know what, Frank, I would love to come in and present to you and your staff at some point. And he's like, yeah, put together a proposal. Well, then we got talking more. And again, I just kept freaking pitching myself in different ways because I'm going to get myself in the doors because I want to change how this institution runs for our community from the inside. And he finally was like, well, why don't you put together what you think your role would look like if we were to bring you on for postvention services? And then he's like, can I find out more because I I'd given him some people's job descriptions, right? Sorry, I'm rambling. But basically, I now he finally has asked me for me to define what I'd want the role to look like. He wants to talk to other people to find out what the role would look like for our county. And I'm very slowly making my progress. So I want to celebrate that. And I need to celebrate because today has been shit so far. So I'd rather focus on the celebrations.
Yes. Well, first, can I just acknowledge you for really just talk about positioning? Way to own that shit. You just owned that. No, this is the position I want to take. In the way you think about me is I do this kind of work and I can help in this kind of way with these kind of people. And it worked. So can we just celebrate with you that it's working?
Yes.
Yay, it's working, making those steps. That's exciting. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And can we send you lots of vibes of support as you continue to take those steps toward whatever that relationship looks like? Thank you. Super stoked for you that you have something to celebrate on a crappy day. Thank you, Amanda. And then Suzanne, I saw you unmute yourself. I just want to make space. Did you want to share something? You can, but you don't have to. Yeah.
Yeah, I missed last Monday because I had a technical exam with my craniosacral therapy teacher, and then I had to drive back from Seattle. And just a little background, it took me so long to find the perfect craniosacral therapy teacher, and she's incredible. She's the best teacher I've ever had, and she's a coach in so many ways. And being neurodivergent, I had a little bit of academia trauma. And so she's been so gentle guiding us through the process, but still being very scholarly about what we're learning. And so I was nervous having an exam that's hands-on her. And I got my feedback from her this week. I got it verbally during the session, but now I have it written. And so I'm trying to take these statements that come from such a wise and knowing point of view and integrate them into my wording that we're building. But it just blows me away, and it's lovely reading it, and it's nice to be witnessed. Maybe even Susanna, your way of being with me was quite lovely, and I can feel the fullness of your heart and your integrity. The techniques are just additions on top of that. Your presence is grounded, spacious, whole, and welcoming. And there's so much more, but I'm really, really happy to have some validation. It gets a little lonely doing one-on-one experiential work. So
yes,
it's nice to have a bigger perspective.
Yeah, and just have your own awesomeness reflected back by someone you respect so highly.
Yeah.
It's really huge. So congratulations, and thanks for sharing that and letting us witness you in that. And can we send you lots of vibes of support and celebration as you get more opportunities to have your incredible work reflected back to you in powerful ways. Thank you, Susanna. Oh, so exciting. Yay, yay, yay. So let's talk about story. This week and next week, we're going to be talking about story. Next week, we'll spend more time crafting your story. But today we're going to look at the power of story in regards to this idea of building safety and trust with your potential and ideal clients. So this week, you're going to start to connect some of the parts that we've worked on. I've done a little like a Mr. Miyagi to you, right? Like sand the fence or paint the fence or whatever the thing is. And now it's like, oh, look, all these things make up your story, right? And so we're going to also take some time talking about what is this thing that I keep referring to called the origin story. So the bigger idea is to take the information that you've gathered about your client avatar and then choose experiences from your own life that most closely match two things. One, the experience your potential clients are having right now, right? The struggles or the challenges or the issues that they're dealing with. And two, where a healing journey with you will take them. And so that's really kind of twofold, right? Your origin story is both talking about your story, and it's also talking about their story. It's showing them what's possible for them. Now, if you don't have a personal story that matches your potential client's experience, that's okay. I don't want you to make it up. I actually had that happen in a business academy call with a different place a few months ago. She's like, well, I haven't really struggled with that. So, but my husband has. I can just put my name on that story and make it his. And I was like, oh, please don't do that. Please don't do that. Please don't make shit up. Like, please only talk about things that have actually happened to you. We're wanting to be in authenticity here. So because what's important here is to be building safety and trust. You can't build safety and trust if you're making shit up. So we're not going to do that. Now, of course, the most powerful origin story is going to be one that resonates with the journey your people on. But if you don't have that story, what you really want to focus on is what feelings your people are dealing with. What feelings they're dealing with now while they're in their challenge, and what feelings they want instead. And then choose a story that best models that you too have had these feelings and that you have applied similar healing principles to get where you are now, to get to the other side of that, somewhere where they also want to be. Now, before we dive too far into the how, I want to talk just a little bit about the why, which I know I've been talking about this throughout our journey together. And also for those of you in Flow and Grow, I've been weaving this stuff in. So this might all blend together a little bit over the stuff I've been talking about this year. But what's the big deal with story? Like, why can't we just make a list of the benefits of working with us and move on? Well, first of all, we're so saturated with information right now in our culture. And that's what a list is, right? Whether you make it a bullet list of, it's for you or it's not for you, or benefits and, all that good stuff. Like, I'm not saying to not do those things. Those things might end up being somewhere in your communication with people. But a powerful story cuts through all that and hits us in a different spot than any list will ever do. The truth is, there's nothing more powerful to the human mind than story. Story is how our brain processes and stores information. It's the filter through which we see everything. And my favorite author, Daniel Quinn, proposes that it's actually story which differentiates humans from other species. Not tools, not fire, not cities, but story. The way that we put information into, first this happened, then this happened, and because these two things happen, conclusion, beginning, middle, end. And people may read lists, but they don't connect with them like they do with stories. They don't stick as well. Tell a good story, and someone may remember it and you forever. I still have people who come up to me and remember stories I shared while speaking at events years ago. And that's why they feel a kinship to me, is because they resonate with my story. And stories cut through the noise and hit us in a unique and powerful way. But the thing that makes story super powerful as a strategy is its ability to bridge gaps in our understanding. So let me say a little bit more about what I mean for that. So as a healer, you work with a very important gap, right? The gap between where your people are and where they want to be, right? Sometimes we'll talk about like, they're on Pain Island and we want to get them to Pleasure Island, or however, people talk about niche, right? But it's like, they're here, they're struggling with a thing, and they want to be over here where they're not struggling with a thing. And your healing is carrying them across that gap, bridging that gap. But in order to articulate this to them, you have to work with another kind of gap, the gap of understanding you and the power of your work to help them. Because right now they're over here and I don't really get who you are and why you can help me. And in order to get them to say, oh, wow, I really believe in this person can help me, there's some information that you need to get across to bridge that gap. And so your marketing has to do the work of getting them to bridge that gap between not knowing who you are and feeling enough safety and trust to invest in working with you. Story is the perfect bridge for that gap. Raise your hand if you've read The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, or if you're familiar with that book. So he says it perfectly with the quote, "The power of storytelling is exactly this, to bridge the gaps where everything else has crumbled." And I just love that. And so even though we're going to go deeper into story format next week as we kind of finalize everything, I want to give you a quick peek at the story format of your origin story so you can start to get that context as we build in the steps today. So I'm going to share my screen, and as usual, I'm going in a non-linear order. So I'm going to start with the last page of your handout. So this is the last page of your handout, which are your 4 stages of your vulnerable origin story. And so last week we worked on stage 1, which is the credibility and positioning. And the reason we start here, again, it's because that if you go right into the low point before you've positioned yourself as amazing, then that person, because of the power of story, the first thing they put in their mind might be, oh no, this person is struggling. Even if you continue to tell the story of how your struggle has ended and life is great, they might still keep you in that spot in their mind, because that's just how our brains work. So we start with that positioning that you worked on last week. And then today we're going to look at stages 2 and 3, which is when things were low, when things really sucked, kind of that like moment of, and then things got really bad. And then here's when they started to turn around. Now we talked recently about this 3-step story format that came from Stories That Stick by Kendra Hall, which I'll be talking more about today. And she says the 3 good parts to any story are normal, explosion, and new normal, right? And so your low point is kind of what normal used to be for you. And then your turnaround point is when things kind of exploded, that moment when something shifted, when something new happened. And hopefully that explosion also highlights the power of your healing work as the possible explosion from them to normal of their low point into their new normal. This is all making sense to y'all? Anyone making sense? Okay, great. So that brings us to the most important factor with story, which is the title of today's lesson, safety and trust. Because when people invest in healing themselves, it's a big deal, right? Is not to be taken lightly. They are trusting you with their transformation, with the trajectory of their lives. And so those who feel safe with you are more likely to say yes if it also feels aligned to invest in working with you. Now, if they don't feel safe, or if they get the energy that they're just being sold to, which I don't see the people in this group really doing that, but those are the methods we've been given, right? They may not know why they say no. And often they'll say, oh, I just can't afford it, because that's the easiest way to get out of doing anything. But it might have nothing to do with money. It might be more of an underlying sense of not feeling enough trust and safety in you or what's possible when working with you. So I will admit, I love hiring people. I love paying for healing work. I love paying for support. I love therapy. I want it all. I want all the healing modalities. And I have learned I have big, deep, intense emotions. And I can't work with someone who I don't feel will be safe for me when I go into those deep, intense places. And I've actually had some people cause harm in the middle of a session with me because they didn't have the capacity to hold the wounds that I have with the things that I have gone through. And I had to get other help to help me with the help I was supposed to be getting from the helper. And so I'm saying all this because by you being real with your dark places, you're helping letting the person know that you can hold space for their dark places too, which is really important in healing. The most harm I've ever experienced in healing is people who are trying to love and light only, spiritual bypass, jump over my dark spaces to get to the light spots. And I don't recommend it. Not a fan. And so I know that all of you have been through some stuff. And so this is your opportunity to be vulnerably visible and share the more emotional and inspirational parts of your own journey so that you can invite them into their own courage to take those steps. And they trust that you get where they are and that you can take them where they want to go. That they can feel connected to your heart and your energy and what you have. And when they feel like they really trust you and feel safe with you, they will be drawn to you to work with you in investing in their healing. And even if they're not ready right now, you take that position of safety and trust in their mind that maybe in a month or some, I've had people come back years later and be like, "Ooh, when I first met you, I wasn't ready for you yet, but I knew that I had to work with you. And now I'm ready." And I'm like, oh my gosh, like sometimes it'll take people 3 years to come back and be like, "I wasn't ready for the intensity of Starr, but I'm ready now. Let's do this thing." And so never underestimate the power of telling a story. So again, we'll be crafting the whole story next week, so don't get overwhelmed with that. Today, we're going to be looking at those 2 important points of when things were low and when things turned around. So I'm going to go back to sharing my screen here and kind of look at these 2 spots. Let's see if I can only show you the part I want to show you. I'm being selective here. Okay. Because you'll go over this whole handout on your own as part of your homework. So I don't want to give it all away. Okay, so these are kind of the 3 steps here of this process. And you've already done step 1, which is consider your ideal client's journey. We did that a couple weeks ago, right? So you're looking at what problem is your ideal client currently challenged with? What are their current emotions? What solutions are they looking for? And what do they hope to feel? And now that you've identified the journey of your client, it's time to think about your own journey. So what parts of your unique path to where you are now could help your client the most? And this is where you think about, when was I challenged with what my client is challenged with? How did it feel? Be specific. And then what solution or aha or insight, or maybe you saw someone, a therapist or a healer, what turned your situation around and how did it feel once that challenge shifted? So those are the 2 points that we're looking at this week. But this is the area I really want to encourage you to go deep on, which is, how did it feel? Feelings are going to be your biggest asset in this. And so I'm going to once again share my feelings list to remind you of this particular resource that you have that I give to all my private clients. And I'm going to start here. Just a reminder, feelings are 1 word. And I like that this feelings list isn't separated into good feelings and bad feelings, because I don't believe in that either orness of life. But feelings likely to be present when your wants are being satisfied, right? That's the top part. And then feelings likely to be present when your wants are not being satisfied. So I would encourage you, hopefully you already use this a little bit in your work already, thinking about your client's journey. But this is where you can start to look at some of those feelings that they are feeling right now and think about times when you also felt those feelings and use feeling words. And then I just want to make a quick note on the second page, which are not feelings. And this is perfect because we're talking about story, because our brain is constantly making up conclusions about ourselves, right? It all comes back to stories we're making up about us. These are the conclusions that we have made up that people are doing to us. And it might be true that those things are happening to us. But what is not true is that those are not feelings, right? So feeling abandoned isn't a feeling, that's a conclusion one has made about the act of being on the receiving end of abandonment. But then you can come back and hear, is it that you're helpless or overwhelmed or hurt or nervous or uneasy? Those are the actual feelings that go with this. And so I'm bringing this up because you want to definitely make sure to identify the feelings where people are going through, not the conclusions they have made up about their situation. I think that differentiation is important. It has helped me. Okay, everybody with me here? I know I'm kind of turning on the fire hose and showing you all the things. So take some time this week to recall how you felt before you solved the problem you solved for your clients. And then get as specific as possible and think about details that you can share that help get that feeling across in your story. And so what I mean by details is, and we're going to talk about this in a second when we talk about the components of story, but a moment in time. So like for mine, I talk a lot about, my low point was at the end of 2017 when I was so burnt out and I had been, trying to force myself into neurotypical ways of doing business for years, and it wasn't working. And I had a big chronic illness flare up. And there I was on the couch. And I was like, I think I need to give this up. It hurts too bad. You can't do this anymore. And I gave myself permission to give up. That was a single moment in time. And I know that many people can relate and resonate with that single moment in time of like, trying to do it this other way is too fucking hard. It hurts. Right. And that's where a lot of my people are at, is they're trying to make this thing work. They're having some success, but they can't expand because they keep hitting this wall of like doing it the way that isn't in alignment. And that's painful. Right. And then think about that moment of how it felt when it turned around for you. What was that quote unquote explosion that paved the way for a new normal for you? And how did that feel? For me, it was, I gave myself permission to give up. And then even in the, okay, you don't ever have to do this again, there was that little voice that's like, but I have so much to give the world. And we have to figure out a way to give it. That was my turning point for me, was my inner big why kind of coming up to the surface. And then me making a commitment to myself that I was going to find a different way to do things. Because I had to do my purpose. I also just couldn't do it the old way anymore. And that was my explosion and new normal, was like, well, then we're going to find a freaking way. And so what was that for you? And this is going to be the biggest part of your homework this week, is identifying those feelings from your client journey homework you did a couple weeks ago. And then thinking of parts of your story that resonate and build empathy and trust with the people still going through those struggles. And so you start with the feelings and then describing those parts of your story. And while we'll look deeper at what makes a story good next week as we're crafting your origin story, I want to plant these seeds now as you're looking at fleshing these ideas out. So in this book that I keep mentioning, Stories That Stick by Kendra Hall, which is, I will admit, part of what inspired me to reoffer this program, because I'm like, oh, this is almost kind of what I'm already teaching, but she says it so well that I want to weave this into this course. And she did years of research on what makes a compelling story in our minds and hearts, like what actually gets us in here where we go like, oof, and found that true and impactful stories have 4 components. And so I'm going to put these in the chat for you to consider as you're thinking about playing with this story of yours, your origin story. So the four components that any really good story has is identifiable characters, authentic emotion, a significant moment, and specific details. So I just put those four things in the chat. Identifiable characters, authentic emotion, a significant moment, and specific details. And as you can probably guess, in your origin story, you are the identifiable character, right? You are the main character. And what we're working on in this program is getting really clear on the other three components, right? And that's why I keep coming back to feeling is really articulating that authentic emotion. And then those last two, a significant moment and specific details. Like if you could remember what shoes you were wearing that day, or the color of the couch, or the smell in the air, right? These are great things that bring people into that moment. So they're there with you, they can feel it. And so your role this week is to take those feelings that you've named that resonate with your people, and then start getting clear on what those specific details and this significant moment is for you. And so this can look like asking yourself the book and author again, Stories That Stick by Kendra Hall. I'll put that in the chat too. I am really liking it, and it's very clear, and it's specifically for business. And while I love the book Winning the Story Wars by Jonah Sachs, it can get a little complicated to start putting what he's teaching into practice. There's like 8 different parts to the story and the villain and all this stuff. And that's fine if that's the way you want to do it. For me, that got a little too complex and I got in my head about it. Her approach seems a lot more straightforward and easy to wrap your head around and make your own. And so over this next week, ask yourself, what was your lowest point? What were you doing? Remember to describe one point, not a general time. And the same with what turned you around. What did you discover? What insight did you have? What made a difference? Paint a picture of that courage and commitment that it took to get through, because it's your people's courage and commitment that's going to get them through to saying yes to working with you. Because my turning point wasn't, oh, and then I decided not to give up and then everything was fine. It took me a whole other year of experimentation and trying things out to find ways that were actually working for me. But it was that commitment to not go back to the old way. When I could feel that old force way bubbling up inside of me, I would just walk away from my desk because I'm like, no, I'm not doing that anymore. I put that down. But that took a lot of commitment and diligence to continue to show up for my new normal. And just a quick note, this is where self-awareness, curiosity, and boundaries come into play as you're really honest with yourself about what feels okay to share in your story. So I want to make it really clear that vulnerable visibility is not about you harming yourself for the sake of your clients. So please only include in your story that which you feel safe sharing publicly. And if there are things that you haven't fully processed or that would harm you to have people getting in there and poking around and looking at, then please protect yourself and not share those parts and get the help that you need to process those parts of your story. So I used to think that I had to offer myself up as the meal in order to attract the right people. And I don't do that anymore. And things go much better for me and my people. And so just a reminder, yes, get vulnerable. Yes, get real. Yes, share your emotions. And only you can know if it feels safe to share those parts of your story. And so play around with these 2 points of your story, that kind of stage 2 and stage 3. And then next week, we'll take your positioning and these 2 parts and we'll put it all together. But for now, keep asking yourself, What does my client need to know about me and my journey to feel safe and trust me enough to support them? Because remember, the power of vulnerable visibility is telling a new type of story, right? Not that inadequacy story where your people are broken and need you to save them, but an empowering story where you got through and so can they. And where their healing journey not only contributes to their own lives, but to the world. For those of you who were at last week's Healers Huddle, we talked about what I call movement-based marketing, which is messaging that not only calls out the benefit to the individual, but of what kind of world we are co-creating as we heal. And the truth is, stories change the world. And so as you write, remember those 4 components of stories that stick: identifiable characters, authentic emotion, a significant moment, and specific details. And then remember the power of your story and of highlighting these single, relatable, emotional moments that build the safety and the trust for the right people who are ready to say yes to their own healing journey by working with you. And then remember to allow your deep desire to serve to come through as you craft. Any questions? I mean, we'll get to coaching in a minute, but for now, any questions around the assignment or what is yours to do between now and next week's call? No? Yeah, Dottie.
What was it? Movement-based what? I wrote down healing.
Movement-based marketing.
Marketing.
Mhm.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And the Healers Huddle recording from last week is already up in the Flow and Grow area if you want to rewatch that conversation for those of you who are Flow and Grow members. So your homework is to read through the Create Your Vulnerable Origin Story handout, to work on step 2, which I just showed you. I'm putting this in the chat. As you look at the feelings and details of your low point and turning point, and then be ready for week 7 next week. Oh my gosh. With some rough ideas for stages 1 through 3. These do not have to be perfectly crafted and ready for story. You can just have some raw information that you know by next week you'll be ready to weave into a story. So that's what I have for you. Hopefully that was useful for you. Some thoughts on story and a look at, okay, now that you've positioned yourself, you can start to tell those deeper parts of your story to your people. And as I mentioned in the handout, you know, this story can be used in so many different ways. You can squish it down into just a few sentences, like maybe a sentence for each part of the story, and tell it briefly, you know, in conversation. It can be something that you share at the beginning of every consultation. I know that I like to share my origin story at the beginning of consultations so people get an idea of who I am and why I'm going to say the things I'm going to say. It can be something that you put in third person and other people introduce you before you get on stage. It can be something on your About Me page. It could be something you post on social media. It can be the little blurb, you know, on your blog about who you are. There's so many different ways and places that you can use your origin story once you get clear on what those 4 steps are. And it can be as brief as a minute and as long as a half an hour, depending on the details that you add and take away. But what I know for me is when I try to make it as short as possible, it helps me get clear on what the most important parts are, and then I can add complexity later. And B says, has me questioning my avatar. Interesting. I'm curious, would you like to share more about that in front of the group, or you just wanted to put that in the chat?
No, I'm clear I could help this person, but I'm having trouble wrapping my head around, and I can do origin stories for what I do, but how I relate that into them makes me wonder if I've got the wrong person.
Interesting. May I offer up a thought to consider?
Let's have to play with it.
Yeah. Can I offer up a thought to consider? Your story may not exactly match their story, but if you can come back to the feelings, are the feelings of your low point and turning point similar to the feelings that they're going through? And often that's enough, even if the story doesn't match exactly. But thanks for bringing that up. So I would love to move into the coaching section of our call. And this is where you can be in the hot seat and get some coaching support. I see Susanna's hand. Yes. Are you volunteering for the hot seat? Awesome. Let me just do a little setup and then we'll get you in here. And then also, if after I work with Susanna, if we've got time left, if anyone wants to workshop some ideas, or if you have some positioning statements you want to throw out, it could be an opportunity to either get my support or group support, depending on what you're looking for. But for this particular coaching hot seat, we'll just do some 3 quick agreements. Number 1, do I have your permission and consent to be the coach for y'all for the next half hour or so? Yes, awesome. Number 2, do I have your agreement that I will be the only coach in the room unless the person being coached asks specifically for group support? Thank you. And number 3, confidentiality, part 1. Don't tell other people's stuff to anyone. And part 2, please don't approach anyone after their coaching and talk to them about their stuff. Thank you. Awesome. All right, B, will you spotlight us? Susanna is spotlit, and here I come. Awesome. Oh, so lovely to have you here, Susanna. And how can I support you today?
Making up for last time by talking a lot today.
Good. Do it.
Yeah, thank you for creating a safe space so I can feel comfortable being open and visible and vulnerable. That's the point. I guess where I've gotten stuck on this before is like a lot of like my dark stuff is really deep, like ancestral, and the way I was raised and coming out of that. And like, I don't really know how to share that without, feeling like I'm oversharing, throwing my family under the bus, and so I'm trying to like pull out specific things, like being told I had IBS when I was 20, and things like that, and having tension in my gut and not knowing how to understand it or release it, things like that. But I'm just having trouble with it because I feel like there's a lot there to work with, but it's not super clear. Like I received this session and this magically happened, even though that can be someone else's experience, but it just isn't for me. It's all layered and dynamic and
absolutely. No. And I appreciate, that desire to be authentic by both being honest that you've had some darker, more intense parts of your story, and that it wasn't like one magical thing, that it was all these layers of things that happened. And so I just first want to thank you for wanting to be integrity in your story. And so the first thing I want to say is, and we'll talk about this more next week, is, your origin story is a specific story of like, I've gone through a similar thing and you can too. But you can have lots of different stories. And I actually recommend that. We're going to talk about that next week, of this idea of having like a story bank, where you actually kind of bank some of these stories that you can bring out and use in different scenarios depending on the situation. Because I think the way that I like to think about stories is it's less about me, really. It's how is this story in service to the person that I'm talking to? And that's why we started with that client avatar journey. Because I too can really relate to having some pretty dark parts of my story that probably wouldn't serve my people to share in an origin story format, for a few reasons. One, because it might be more dark than they're even capable of holding in this particular moment.
Yeah.
Which I have found that then like I share a really intense part of my story, and then all of a sudden I feel like I have to take care of their emotions. It's very like raise your hand if you're familiar with this process. Yes.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, right. To me, this is just my life. But to you, like, I just traumatized you even considering it's just like normal for me. So,
Yeah.
so I definitely get that. And that's why I think it's being a little strategic around what would really serve this person right now in building that safety and trust. And then some of the deeper, more vulnerable stuff, I will share those stories once people have already bought into Starr and are in my sacred safe space like this, like in this type of a place. I have no problem sharing some of those darker parts of my story because I want you all to see that I've been through some stuff and I can get to the other side. But I maybe wouldn't share those as a marketing tool or as a get to know Starr kind of a story. Does that, how is that landing?
It makes sense. I'm still, it's just going to be a process of me like translating that into making my stories.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but that makes sense to strategize it for safety and trust for them and to narrow it down. I'm just processing like ways of doing that, and then it's just the journey.
Yeah, so maybe it would help, maybe I can help you out a little bit. Like, tell me a little bit more about who your people are and what is that moment for them where they're like, oh crap, I got to get some help with this.
Yeah. What I found is that my people are women in the middle of life who are really passionate about their values and giving back to their communities and families, and they're really seen as strong people, but their body just throws some wrench in the system, and they don't know how to get help for it, and they don't like the help they've received, and they just end up feeling lost and alone with it, and I want to help them.
I love that. Well, and I feel like there's so much potential, and thank you for naming all that. I feel like there's so much potential to plug in parts of your story in there. It sounds like, with some of the, just a couple things that you mentioned, at the beginning of your times in the hot seat today, how you got these answers that didn't help you, you know. And so I would say you don't have to go through the whole trajectory of all the things, but maybe highlight one of the most painful or frustrating ones. How many years did it take you to finally get better answers? Or how many different practitioners did you have to see? Or, that's where like the details can come in. So you're not giving the whole story because that would take way too long because your story is probably very layered and nuanced. But you can give a little bit of a generalization and then like one moment, like maybe was there a moment of relief when someone finally took you seriously?
Yeah.
Like moments like that where someone's finally like, oh my gosh, that's not IBS, that's this other thing, and we can do something about it, or whatever, those moments of, oh, I'm not crazy, or what, whatever those things are that are where your client is really hoping to get, that you've probably had some of those moments in your own story that you can highlight the power, and you can even name, and it wasn't some, magical one-time thing. It's been an ongoing journey of, and then naming kind of whatever that was for you. How is all that landing? Is that helping at all to get a clear?
Yeah. Well, actually, my biggest story, my most clear aha story has been on my website for like 7 years, but I want something more. So I think I'm like putting that to the side and like digging deeper in other things. And also thinking, well, I'll come back to that and maybe reframe it and maybe get it from a different angle,
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And then I also think it makes sense too, if you're going to be speaking to different rooms, different groups of people, I'll have like a basic origin story outline, but I'll change up the details, not making it untrue, but just like add or take away different details depending on who I'm talking to. I might think I might highlight a certain part that I know resonates with them, just to like showcase like, hey, I get that thing you said in your intake form. I got it because, or I get it because I've been through something similar, and I might bring that out and highlight it. So again, this isn't like a static one time, one and done sort of thing, but having that, having those 4 steps, kind of the 4 stages, at least the basics already planned out, I think would be great. And I think
Okay.
the thing that gives a story more, because you're like, I want it to be more, is usually those in the moment details
Yeah.
and feelings. It's those 4 components that I was talking about. It's like a moment rather than trying to describe a general situation.
Yeah. And I think what I have on my website now, I think is more general, like how I was numb to my body and how I get put into my body, and but there's all these little parts like learning the IBS and trusting my gut literally, and and things like that.
I love that.
So and that's where I want to dig deeper, is so more into some specifics.
Yeah, and I would just say feelings. How
Yeah.
did it feel to continue to be told this was IBS when you knew it wasn't, or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
feel to have those, to be numb to your body? What did that, what other areas of your life did that impact?
Yeah.
And really kind of naming some of those finer details, those practical details. Because then people can like really put themselves in your story.
Yeah.
Anything else present that you're present to right now that's wanting some support?
No, I just need a process at this point.
Yes.
That's good. That helped me clarify what I'm wanting and how to get there. I can see a path.
Awesome. Yay. Well, can we send you support as you continue to clarify what those deeper feelings and moments and details
That
are?
would feel good to my gut. Thank you.
And thank you for listening to your gut, literally.
Can't help it.
Thank you. Great. Raise your hand if you got something from Susanna's hot seat moment for yourself. Yeah, awesome. Anyone else want to be in the hot seat for a moment, or workshop some, of your positioning statements or something that you want to be witnessed around? We've got time. Camille, come on down.
My internet's been a little unstable, so I hope it'll cooperate with me. But anyway, I just wanted to name that. I'm trying to think where I want to start, because I guess just feeling a little stuck on like what stories are helpful, and because I feel like there's sort of some things that are personal stories, but then also like more like, or I guess the idea of like how to like what work, like how I've like worked with similar people, even if that's not something that I like directly have haven't personally experienced. So, and then also just just feeling kind of stuck on positioning statements and what maybe just 2 in my head. I don't know if I'm sort of still kind of balancing that, like what's the there's the sort of background and therapy and times when like we're not sharing a whole lot about ourselves, so trying to figure out where that line is for me too.
Yeah, definitely. Did you play with some positioning statements? Like, did you come up with a bunch of bad ones? Because I know that's always helpful if I'm getting stuck there.
I mean, I was kind of I guess doing some brainstorming. I was a little I watched the replay a little bit later in the week, and so I was doing a little brainstorming today, but I don't know was just getting a little stuck on like what things to include. And I had shared earlier in one of the earlier partner shares, like I realize I get hung up sometimes on like how to quantify like experience of like, I finished I finished grad school in 2010, but like I didn't get licensed till 2021. So there's sort of like how to explain what all those things mean, or if I'm over explaining.
No, that's great. So one thing to keep in mind is that a positioning statement is not a resume. So,
Sure.
so just naming that, its purpose isn't to qualify you or prove anything. It's more to begin to take up a place of expertise and credibility in the person's mind. So again, it's that initial, the kind of the first place they're going to put you in their mind, right? And so even if it's just, it can be as simple as, I've been seeing clients for X number of years, or over the last X number of years, I've seen this many clients. Now, I do like to add in the humanness, so it's like we talk about a good positioning statement has that credibility and humanity in it, so it could be something like, and obviously only say this if it's true, but like, even after seeing clients for X number of years, I'm still so moved by the courage that it takes for people to say yes to therapy. And again, only say that if it's true. I'm just throwing stuff out there. But
Yeah, no, I guess there's, because like part of my experience was like I worked for an employee assistance program for a long time. So I wasn't doing ongoing or counseling with people. So a lot of what I did some like immediate support, but I also like gave a lot of referrals. So I had like a lot of those like really brief conversations of just like, what's the general problem, and helping sort of like match people, or like answering more general questions about the process than actually like really doing the work with people. So like I've talked to like, well, heck, some of those were probably like, I might have talked to like 20 people a day, because they're all such like, short conversations. So it's sort of, I guess it's also that range of experience from these, like, okay, like I, might have really helped somebody, but, and in that like 20-minute conversation, and then, the opposite end of people I've worked with for like 5 years. So there's this sort of like range of really brief interventions to like really ongoing work too. I guess maybe that's also where I'm trying to figure out how to explain all of that, or what's the most meaningful pieces of that.
Well, I think first of all, just take some pressure off that there's no way any statement is going to be able to explain your awesomeness in its totality. So first of all, just like, taking that pressure off. And also, it's so easy to be unimpressed by our own stuff. And we forget that other people are like, wow, you talk to 20 people a day? That's so cool. And so I think it's understanding that the whole purpose of a positioning statement is for you to be in awe of you a little bit, so that they can be in awe of you. And so it's less like a formal, here's my resume and here's my qualifications. And it's more like, I'm pretty fucking rad, let me tell you why. And so I'm saying that because I feel like it doesn't actually, like, the amount of conversations you've had or amount of years you've whatever is less important than you being able to articulate that you are a qualified and capable Camille. And so I think the words matter less than your energy of being able to name, this is a specific flavor of my awesome.
And okay, that's helpful.
And so I was rewatching the original recordings from 2019, and there was a woman on there who was involved in that class, and she was just starting to get her license around health and wellness and stuff, and she was having a really hard time with these idea of positioning statements. And then after the week of looking at it, she realized that she's actually been working in the field of health and wellness for like 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't matter under what capacity and exactly what things she called herself during those 15 years or exactly how many number of people that she helped. She'd been in the field of health and wellness for 15 years, and that was true. And so I'm just wondering if you can apply a similar thinking of you, that it's less about exactly what role you had and exactly when your degree came and exactly when you got your license. And it's more about how long have you been in the field of mental health, and name that, because this is obviously something that you've been passionate about for a really long time. And that's what people want to know. They want to know your passion. They want to know your spark. They want to know your humanness. And so even just saying, like, so you got your degree in 2010, how long did it take you to study for that degree?
That was 3 years. So, and well, and again, maybe this is where I get, perfection. I don't know if it's perfectionist or just wanting to be like really exact, but like my official program was 3 years. But I also was doing I took time to do some prerequisites before that, because I was being really thoughtful, I guess, about transitioning from having my undergrad degree in English so I never took psychology class in undergrad. So I took a couple psych classes at PCC before I applied to Portland State for my graduate degree. So so I guess there's also that intention of wanting to okay, yes, I'm switching gears now, so I want to be really prepared.
And so when did you start studying this stuff?
I guess that would have been 2000, probably about 2006.
Okay. So you've been studying mental health for over 15 years.
Yes. And I guess also, I mean, there was some, or I guess not, mental health exactly, but some of the public health things, I guess, that sort of started that journey. That was 2001. That was more like public health and sex education work that I was doing at that point.
And so I think it's okay to be general and to just state clearly that you've been in this field for X number of years, and to stand by that, and to not feel like you have to break it down into proving, well, I mean, technically this counts because this and this and this. Because I feel like there's some of that stuff that I may have talked about last week around, culturally, women tend to take less ownership of how fucking awesome they are and how much credibility they have and how much expertise they have. I highly recommend the book Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg. She was the CFO for Facebook. And she has study after study after study of how women will be overly qualified for the position, still not raise their hand. And men will be severely underqualified for the position and say, sign me up every single time. And so I'm saying this because I don't want you to feel shame for the fact that you've internalized misogyny and a misogynistic culture that tells you that the hard work that you've done isn't as important as some man doing the same amount or probably less work. And so I'm just bringing that up. Obviously, if we had more time, or if this was like a private, coaching call, we could go a lot deeper together. But I just want to name, because I know it's been helpful for me to look at that in myself, to be like, oh, this is me internalizing misogyny. And I don't want to freaking do that. That what I do, the work that I give, the value that I give is fucking important. And so part of this is using some words, but part of this is owning how awesome you are and not being afraid to just name that without any qualifiers, without any explanations, without a big long backstory, without a resume, and just name. I, Camille, have been studying mental health and social health for over 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I bring a lot of different, background to the table when I work with people because of all the different areas that I've worked in. And that's true. There's nothing untrue about that statement.
Mm-hmm.
And then if it's hard to say that, then that's where the inner work comes in. That's where you start looking at those inner blocks to really owning your awesomeness. Because until you work on those inner blocks, no words are ever going to feel right because there's going to be part of you talking yourself out of using those words.
Mm-hmm.
So how's all that landing?
Okay, I think still processing, and a few places my internet was a little laggy, so I think that was also just letting all that sink in too. And where do I need to be precise, and where's maybe finding some of those more general ways of, because I have worked in like helping professionals for a really long time, and I guess that feels a little easier to talk about in that way too, sort of just like how long that's been a part of like things I do is like giving back, or working with people in like lots of different ways, whether and then what was maybe more specifically like mental health, but definitely a lot more in wellness and education and other sort of similar spheres.
Yes. And it's okay to own that. It's okay to own that. Like I read my first self-help book when I was 13, and I started really studying that shit when I was a teenager. And it took me a while to really own, to like be honest with myself. It's like, I've actually been studying personal development for 30 fucking years because it's been a very important part of my journey, is to look on the inside of me. Does that mean that I was licensed to see clients when I was 15? No, but my friends came to me and asked me for a lot of advice and help because I was the one studying that stuff. And so it takes some tenacity to own. Yeah, I've been studying personal and spiritual development for 30 years. And I think that might be something, a muscle for you to build. It's just a little bit more tenacity at owning your awesomeness and how much experience you actually have. So can we send you some support as you continue to find ways to talk about yourself that are a little stretchy?
No, thank you. And I think that's helpful too, or even just, having that like curiosity of.
You've got this. And please use the group. I know that Seamus offered some support around, some generous support around feedback for positioning statements. If it feels supportive, you can take them up on that. But I'm glad you're here, and I want to see you owning how awesome you are.
Thank you. Yes, no, thank you for the ideas, and that was some helpful reframes, and also maybe, and just thinking of some of those ways to think, like where I've been interested in things for a long time too, and that might be just coming back to that maybe passion being helpful.
Yes, exactly. Let people see ya. Thank you, Camille.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so we are at the end of our time today. I would love to just take a few quick shares if anyone wants to share in a sentence or two, what has been your takeaway or insight or aha today? What's different now than when we started together? Yeah, Dottie.
I've been in the field of health and wellness and helping people feel better for over 50 years. It's like, really?
Woo!
Yeah. And I wrote down, my passion is to help people feel better. So that certainly can be stated as a general thing. And it's true about me. I want people to feel better.
Yes.
And we can go through all the convoluted stuff of, telling your truth and blah, 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 but people feel bad about themselves and it hurts.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dottie. Anyone else want to be witnessed as you name something that's different? B said in the chat, my first poem was published when I was 7, and I think mimeographed School Literary Journal. Oh, I love that. And then Susanna says, your stories are what drew me to you, Starr. And that started about 5 years ago. See, like something that I shared 5 years ago, and now here you are. And so never underestimate the power of a good story. Despite my issues with the word healer, I've wanted to be one since I was 7. Yes, I love that. I feel that. Yeah, and I was always the one that everyone came to when they had hard stuff going on. And then later I was like, oh, right, I've kind of been doing this all along. That's okay to name that. Anyone else want to share any insights you had today before we let you go for the week? All right. Well, I want to thank you all so much for being here, and give a special thanks to Bea for being our tech support for this program. She will miss us next week while she is traveling, and I'll have to push all the buttons myself. Oh, what was me? Just kidding. But we appreciate you so much, Bea, and just appreciate all of you for being on this journey, for being willing to look at this stuff. I know sometimes it's uncomfortable, but I think that's part of what makes it so powerful, right? Vulnerability is power. And so thanks for being willing to be vulnerable here in this space with each other and with your people so that they can see you and build that safety and trust that is needed in order to say, yes, I will give you money and you will give me healing. Well, not give me, but you know what I mean. So thank you all so much. I will see you next week for week 7, same bat time, same bat channel, and I'll get all this stuff, including your handouts, up in the member vault area as soon as we pop off here and I eat a little lunch. So just let's do a round of awesome vibes for everyone as we dance with our edges with a lot of love and grace, and remember to utilize the group. We are all here for each other. Just appreciate you all so much. Have a great rest of your day, everyone. This is Starr with 2 R's signing out.